A common vision for creative media connected me with Brad Leitch from his first days at CMU, and so I'm very privileged to introduce him today. Brad graduated in 2013 with a Bachelor of Arts in Peace and Conflict Transformation Studies. He's also an award-winning filmmaker, a peacebuilder activist, an actor with playback theater, and founder of Rebel Sky Media, a film and video production company here in Winnipeg. His production work and interests, his peace building, has taken him around the world, exploring those issues in Canada, in Iraqi-Kurdistan, in Israel, Palestine, in the UK, and other places. His work currently is featured in the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, and there's also a permanent exhibit at the Pier 21 Museum of Immigration in Halifax. Brad's more recent documentary, Reserve 107, which we were very privileged to premiere here in Manitoba last night, explores the goings-on in Laird, Saskatchewan, where Mennonites, Lutherans have come together to find some justice for young Chippewan First Nations whose land they have settled on. Brad and his wife, Adrienne, attend Hope Mennonite Church here in Winnipeg. Over the years, Brad here at CMU has developed a very strong bond with Wendy Craker, instructor of Peace and Conflict Transformation Studies. And Wendy would love to be here today. She's in BC presenting at a conference, so I'm standing in. Brad is someone whose curiosity moves him into action. This became clear to Wendy when after a PAX class, Brad would drop by and say, "You know, I tried that." Wendy realized that she'd need to be particularly vigilant about what she said in class because Brad was taking her seriously, very seriously. One might say that the CMU PAX environment helped Brad name and clarify what was already in him. While his soft-spoken demeanor may defy some activist stereotypes, it is clear that he lives into deep commitments. When he picks up a camera, he has an eye for beauty and for justice. Brad understands the power of narrative as a gift given to us by God and revels in its capacity for peace building. Perhaps this one-liner that fell off Brad's lips over coffee at Stella's a couple weeks ago epitomizes who Brad is. We were discussing how peace activism and filmmaking converge on the ground, in this case in Laird, Saskatchewan. And he said with a kind of smirk on his face, "I can ask tough questions through my smile." And that is exactly it. Brad, you bring a godly warmth of spirit, a generous smile that is coupled with an unrelenting commitment to righting wrongs. We are delighted to celebrate that in you today.
I feel blessed to have had incredible educators throughout my life. And today I want to begin by telling you two stories of educators who have shared their life and lessons with me at an early age and how that went on to shape my life and work in filmmaking and other kinds of art making. Growing up in Southern Ontario, one of my early childhood memories is at the age of 5, driving back and forth to a hospital. My mom had introduced me to a little boy the same age as me in our community who had been diagnosed with leukemia. We would take regular trips to visit him. And during some of those visits, I watched my friend suffer. Spending time with John Martin, we had some pretty special memories together. Playing games, pulling tricks on the nurses, a costume and pizza night sleepover. But I also have beautiful memories of the car rides there and back, and conversations I would have with my mom. We would talk about everything, including John Martin and his illness. But sometimes when we ran out of words, we would sing. I can't seem to remember the last visit with my friend, but I do remember the last memory of a car ride home from that hospital. I remember the feeling of knowing he would be gone soon, and I remember being sad, and I also remember the song that we sang that drive. The lyrics were from a passage in Isaiah that went, "Those who wait upon the Lord will renew their strength, and they will mount up on wings like eagles." That song will always connect me to that moment and that memory of John Martin and my mom. In a small but way, my mom, as an early educator, demonstrated something special during those car rides. She taught me the power of empathy and song at a time when we were processing the loss of a dying loved one. Through that whole experience, she gave of her own time and modeled concern and care for those who suffer. And from her, I also learned how to experience music, not simply as something performative, but as personal and spiritual. The lesson hit home for me again years later when I sat alone in her palliative care hospital room, because this time, cancer came for my mom. I was reminded of how to process pain on one of our last nights together. She was thinking about her funeral and when she called what she called her celebration service, and she opened a binder and we began to look at songs. But her eyes were tired, so she asked me to read her the titles. But then she couldn't remember the songs simply by their names, so despite my apprehension, she asked me to sing them to her. And for one last time together, through song, we ascended into a sacred space. Music never became my passion. When it came to art making, my first love was theater. But that hasn't always been an easy path. When you live with mental illness and anxiety, as I do, you constantly self-police and self-critique. Your anxiety attaches onto a moment and experience and begins to build a wall of fear, doubt, and despair. And it's something that your inner critic fixates on. Sometimes it's through your emotions or even the physical symptoms that can be detrimental to the creative process. For example, in high school, during a difficult season with anxiety, I lost my ability to speak in public almost overnight. I would get called on to read in class and the pages would get blurry and my throat would begin to lose the air. Sometimes I would make it through a few sentences, other times the teacher would quickly move on to another student. Even at the family dinner table, in the safety of loving parents, I would sweat and stutter my way through a devotional reading. Over a period of years, I began to stop some of the things I love to do, including performance arts like theater. Even everyday situations forced me to hide. I remember very specific moments of encouragement when a teacher would come up to me and say, "Brad, let's walk." And we'd strut around the high school halls and talk. It was a high school drama teacher who encouraged me to rejoin a theater class. This teacher, aware or not, afforded me one of the greatest opportunities to discover personal transformation through the arts. And through this and other support, I slowly regained some skills I lost. I didn't cure anxiety with art making, but at the right time, in the right way, I found that anxiety and theater arts, even with some irony and resistance, were able to coexist. This is a deeply personal story. Even telling it requires living into the lessons I learned then, that art making and storytelling often include risk-taking, truth-telling, and deep conviction and love. Although I still live with anxiety, I'm happy to say I still act. Here in Winnipeg, I'm part of an acting troupe called Red Threads for Peace that works with something called playback theater, a type of improv theater where a person in the audience will share a story from their life, and an acting troupe will play back that story live on the spot, using a variety of different theater forms. There are international troupes around the world using playback theater in schools, in hospitals, prisons, and a variety of places and situations of conflict. When it is used in workshop settings, people will come together, learn the forms, and begin to play back each other's moments and stories. Here in Winnipeg, we do not all think of ourselves as professional actors by any means, nor do we need to be. But there is a collective passion and love for this art form, and we work hard on learning, practicing, and playing together. When we perform, we learn the art of listening and empathy as we try to hear and then perform the essence of another's story. Sometimes the stories bring us into someone's experience that includes celebration or joy. Other stories tell of hardship and loss, where we take on the important but challenging task of playing with pain. I have seen and heard how this type of theater has helped to heal the wounds of others in so many parts of the world, and I know it to be true for myself. When I became interested in combining art making with peacebuilding, I found CMU's Peace and Conflict Transformation program and moved to Winnipeg. I was instantly immersed into one of the most concentrated and influential learning spaces of thoughtful educators, staff, and students. But I was a little bit skeptical of an academic environment and what it might do to art making. Instead, what I found was peacebuilding as an art form itself. It required flexibility, cooperation, deep listening, and a need to build diverse and creative models and ideas for transformation, all with a concern and interest for including the participation and stories of people. I learned from skilled and compassionate practitioners who modeled in their life and lessons the art of conflict transformation. I didn't find an institution as much as I found a community of people, passionate about the issues I also cared about and quick to model their beliefs, convictions, and concerns about the well-being of others inside and outside of the classroom. I was also immersed for the first time into an Anabaptist tradition and spirituality that has become essential, vital for sustaining my life and work. I will forever be shaped by this community I came from, and for that I am always in debt to you. And I don't mean the student loan debt, the good debt that comes from an abundant grace and gratitude and appreciation. Because of CMU, I now call Winnipeg this wonderful prairie city home, together with my partner Adrienne, who I also met here, only 100 yards from where we stand. I met her at a Blah Rock Coffee House performance where I heard her sing, and it was love at first sound. Can't help it. My dad is also here today, my dad and Karen. My dad has always been a champion for me, even if he has struggled to understand what I'm doing and where I'm going. He has always connected to the essence, at the heart level. And I'm so appreciative for the many incredible ways you have supported me. My love and appreciation for the sky come from our own car ride adventures, chasing storms. The kind of projects I embark on as a filmmaker sometimes bring me in the presence of pain, in the raw and unfolding context of where that occurs. Over 10 years with my camera, I've been invited to hear stories from political prisoners in hiding, victims of chemical warfare, survivor stories of childhood trauma, remote farmers on the run from outside forces, families watching the ecological destruction of their land. In every one of these places, I've also witnessed the strength and determination of people. I can testify to their resilience. I have seen with my own eyes and through the lens, individuals and groups stand up for themselves, gather in streets, creatively organize, even as they were subject to violence. I've also met people emerging out of loss and hardship using art making and storytelling that include painting, weaving, writing, drumming, claymaking, dancing, film, photography, and song. As a filmmaker, I believe we all have stories worthy of a feature-length film and a cinematic sound score. And if any of you ever invited me to make a documentary of your life or had my troupe and I do a playback performance for you, I would look and listen deeply and hope to use my creative energy to show you your story, the parts you already knew, and perhaps something you might discover for the first time. And I think that it would contribute to your own transformation in a way that I know art making and storytelling has shaped me. If you are not already, I hope that it would encourage you to also pursue art in its many forms and to combine it with your faith and culture. May we take the risk to sing in loss or play in places of pain. May we honor the lessons of educators who've gifted us with their time and lives, so that we ourselves may live a good song, a good film, a good story. For today's recognition, I want to thank my educators here, those who live on in memory, my fellow recipients, and Canadian Mennonite University. Thank you.